Book 21 is pretty intense. It's called The Test of the Bow. The book opens with Penelope going to dig out the bow good old Odysseus used to use so long ago. So, page 391. Upon Penelope, most born in love and thought, Athena cast a glance like a gray sea lifting her. Now, to bring the tough bow out and bring the iron blades. Now try those dogs at archery to usher bloody slaughter in. We know they're going to die. So moving stairward, the queen took up a fine door hook of bronze, ivory hafted, smooth in her clenched hand, and led her maids down to a distant room, a storeroom where the master's treasure lay. Bronze, bar gold, black iron forged and wrought, in this place hung the double torsion bow, and arrows in a quiver, a great sheaf, quills of groaning. Now we have to get the backstory on the bow. Remember how with the epic poems of Beowulf, we had to get the backstory on the sword, and Siegfried, we had to hear all about his garments, so we need some backstory here. In the old time, in Lacedaemon, her lord had got these arms from Iphitus, Aretus' son. The two met in Messenia at Ortilochus's table on the day Odysseus claimed a debt owed by that realm, sheep stolen by Messenians out of Ithaca in their long ships, 300 head and herdsmen. So Odysseus got sent to Lacedaemon to go and get the sheep and shepherds back. Seniors of Ithaca and his father sent him on that far embassy when he was young, but Iphitus had come there tracking strays, 12 shy mares with mule colts yet unweaned. So at the same time Odysseus is heading to Lacedaemon, Iphitus had been tracking his mares and their colts. A fatal chase, they led him over prairies into the hands of Hercules. Now, in this little story here, Hercules is kind of a jerk. He's a bad guy. That massive son of toil and mortal son of Zeus murdered his guest at wine in his own house, inhuman, shameless in the sight of heaven, to keep the mares and colts in his own grange. So Hercules wanted these mares and mules that Iphitus was hunting after, and so he kills Iphitus. Even though Iphitus was a guest in his house. And so he broke the rules of conduct. We already saw Antinous is disrespectful that way, and Polyphemus the Cyclops was disrespectful that way. Okay. Now Iphitus, when he knew Odysseus, so, okay, Iphitus is dead, but before he died, Iphitus, when he knew Odysseus, gave him the master bowman's arm, for old Aretus had left it on his deathbed to his son. In fellowship, Odysseus gave a lance and a sharp sword. So these two guys meet. They each have a different mission. They're like, hey, you seem like a good guy. Let me give you my bow. Oh, you seem like a good guy too. Let me give you a lance and a sword. However, the friendship comes to a quick end. Hercules killed Iphitus before one friend could play host to the other. And Lord Odysseus would not take the bow and the black ships to the great war at Troy. As a keepsake, he put it by. It served him well at home in Ithaca. So this is one item he doesn't take with him to Troy. So that's the backstory on all of that. Okay, so back to Penelope. Now the queen reached the storeroom door and halted. Here was an oaken sill, cut long ago and sanded clean and bedded true. 4 square the door jambs, and the shining doors were set by the careful builder. Odysseus's door. Penelope untied the strap around the curving handle, pushed her hook into the slit, aimed at the bolts inside, and shot them back. Okay, now we get a Homeric simile with the sound of the door. Then came a rasping sound as those bright doors the key had sprung gave way. A bellow like a bull's vaunt in a meadow, followed by her light footfall entering over the plank floor. Herb-scented robes lay there in chests, but the lady's milk-white arms went up to lift the bow down from a peg in its own polished bow case. So she doesn't get swayed from her mission to get the bow by the beautiful robes and the other things. Nope. She's got clear purpose here. Now Penelope sank down, holding the weapon on her knees, and drew her husband's great bow out, and sobbed and bit her lip and let the salt tears flow. Then back she went to face the crowded hall, tremendous bow in hand, and on her shoulder hung the quiver spiked with coughing death. Behind her, maids bore a basket full of axe heads, bronze and iron implements for the master's game. Thus in her beauty she approached the suitors, and near a pillar of the solid roof she paused, her shining veil across her cheeks, her maids on either hand, and still then spoke to the banqueters. "My lords, hear me. Suitors indeed, you commandeered this house to feast and drink in day and night. My husband being long gone, long out of mind, you found no justification for yourselves, none except your lust to marry me. Stand up then. We now declare a contest for that prize. Here is my Lord Odysseus's hunting bow. Bend and string it, if you can. Who sends an arrow through iron axe helve sockets 12 in line? I join my life with his, and leave this place, my home, my rich and beautiful bridal house, forever to be remembered, though I dream it only." Then to Eumaeus, "Carry the bow forward, carry the blades." Tears came to the swineherd's eyes as he reached out for the big bow. He laid it down at the suitor's feet. Across the room, the cowherd sobbed, knowing the master's weapon. Okay, so we get another commentary. We see how loyal these servants are. Homer has really elevated 3 servants, Eumaeus, Philetus, and Euryclea, to be very important in all of this. And that's atypical, Most people would not have recognized how important the servants are. They would have gotten, shoved to the background. But they play a key role here. Antinius growled with a glance at both. "Clods! They go to pieces over nothing. You two there, why are you sniveling? To upset the woman even more? Has she not pain enough over her lost husband? Sit down! Get on with dinner quietly, or cry about it outside if you must. Leave us the bow. A clean-cut game, it looks to me. Nobody bends that bow stave easily in this company. Is there a man here made like Odysseus? I remember him from childhood. I can see him even now." Okay, so he kind of gives Odysseus a compliment, which is weird for Antinius. What's ironic is he says, "I remember him from childhood. I can see him even now." He's talking about in his mind's eye. But this comment actually makes Telemachus laugh like, yup, he's here. But then he's like, oh, I just laughed out loud. I got to kind of backpedal here and say why I laughed. And so it's kind of goofy. You'll get to it in a few lines here. There's some foreshadowing first. That was the way he played it, hoping inwardly to span the great horn bow with corded gut and drill the iron with his shot. He, Antinius, destined to be the first of all to savor blood from a biting arrow at his throat, a shaft drawn by the fingers of Odysseus, whom he had mocked and plundered, leading on the rest his boon companions. Now they heard a gay snort of laughter from Telemachus, who said then, brilliant, so he thinks on his feet. He comes back, "A queer thing that, has Zeus Almighty made me a half-wit for all her spirit mother has given in. Promised to go off with someone, and is that amusing? What am I cackling for? Step up, my lords, contend now for your prize." Okay, so foreshadowing, Antinius is going to be the first killed. And Telemachus kind of covers up his laugh, okay? And this is all going to get started here. "There is no woman like her in Achaea, not in old Argos, Pylos, or Mycenae, neither in Ithaca nor on the mainland, and you all know it without praise of mine. Come on, no hanging back, no more delay in getting the bow bent. Who's the winner? I myself should like to try that bow. Suppose I bend it and bring off the shot. My heart will be less heavy, seeing the queen my mother go for the last time from this house and hall, if I who stay can do my father's feat." So he kind of wants to try, see if he can do it too. He moved out quickly, dropping his crimson cloak, and lifted sword and sword belt from his shoulders. His preparation was to dig a trench, heaping the earth in a long ridge beside it, to hold the blades half-bedded. A taut cord aligned the socket rings, and no one there but looked on wondering at his workmanship, for the boy had never seen it done. They're all kind of like, What's he doing? How does he know how to do that? He was a baby. He never saw Odysseus do this. He took his stand then on the broad door sill to attempt the bow. 3 times he put his back into it and sprang it. 3 times he had to slack off. Still, he meant to string that bow and pull for the needle shot. A 4th try, and he had it all but strung when a stiffening in Odysseus made him check. Abruptly, he stopped and turned and said, "Blast and damn it, must I be a milksop all my life? Half grown, all thumbs, no strength or naked arms to defend myself if someone picks a fight with me. Take over, oh my elders and betters, try the bow, run off the contest." So Odysseus kind of gives him this signal, and he's like, "Oh, I better not. That might spoil the plan here." And so then he turns it over to the suitors. And he stood the weapon upright against the massy timber door with one arrow across the horn aslant, then went back to his chair. Antinous gave the word. "Now, one man at a time, rise and go forward, round the room in order, left to right from where they dip the wine." As this seemed fair enough, up stood Leodes, the son of Oenops. This man used to find visions for them in the smoke of sacrifice. He kept his chair well back, retired by the wine bowl, for he alone could not abide their manners, but sat in shame for all the rest. Now it was he who had first to confront the bow, standing up on the broad door sill. He failed. The bow, unbending, made his thin hands yield. Okay, he's pretty wimpy in the hands. No muscle in them. He gave up and said, "Friends, I cannot. Let the next man handle it. Here's a bow to break the heart and spirit of many strong men. Aye, and death is less bitter than to live on and never have the beauty that we came here, laying siege to so many days. Resolute are you still to win Odysseus's lady Penelope? Pitch yourself against the bow, and look among Achaeans for another's daughter. Gifts will be enough to court and take her. Let the best offer win." With this, Leodes thrust the bow away from him and left it upright against the massy timber door, with one arrow aslant across the horn. As he went down to his chair, he heard Antinous' voice rising. Okay, so in a nutshell, Leodes had said, this is an impossible task. We should just give up, find another woman to court, move on. Antinous, of course, is not ever going to give up on this, and so he gets upset. "What is that you say? It makes me burn. You cannot string the weapon. So here's a bow to break the heart and spirit of many strong men. Crushing thought. You were not born. You never had it in you to pull that bow or let an arrow fly. But here are men who can and will." He called out to the goatherd, Melanthius, "Kindle a fire there. Be quick about it. Draw up a big bench with a sheepskin on it and bring a cake of lard out of the stores. Contenders from now on will heat and grease the bow. We'll try it limber and bring off the shot." So using a little bit of heat and grease to make the bow bend. It's not going to work. Melanthius darted out to light a blaze, drew up a bench, and threw a big sheepskin over it, and brought a cake of lard. So one by one the young men warmed and greased the bow for bending. But not a man could string it. They were whipped. Antinous held off, so did Eurymachus. Suitors in chief, by far the ablest there, so they let all the little peons try it first. 2 men had meanwhile left the hall, swineherd and cowherd, in companionship, one downcast as the other, but Odysseus followed them outdoors, outside the court, and coming up said gently, "You, herdsman, and you too, swineherd, I could say a thing to you, or should I keep it in the dark? No, speak, my heart tells me. Would you be men enough to stand by Odysseus if he came back? Suppose he dropped out of a clear sky, as I did. Suppose some god should bring him. Would you bear arms for him, or for the suitors?" The cowherd said, "Let the master come. Father Zeus, grant our old wish. Some courier, guide him back. Then judge what stuff is in me and how I manage arms." Likewise Eumaeus fell to praying all heaven for his return, so that Odysseus, sure at least of these, told them, I am at home, for I am he. I bore adversities, but in the 20th year I am ashore in my own land. I find the two of you, alone among my people, longed for my coming. Prayers I never heard except your own that I might come again. So now, what is in store for you, I'll tell you. If Zeus brings down the suitors by my hand, I promise marriages to both, and cattle and houses built near mine. Okay, this is a huge step up, really elevating these servants to the nobility status. Moving on. And you shall be brothers in arms of my Telemachus. He's going to make them equal to sons. Here, let me show you something else. A sign that I am he. You can trust me. Look, this old scar from the tusk wound that I got boar hunting on Parnassus. Antilochus's sons and I. Yep, check out my boar scar. Love it. Okay. Shifting his rags, he bared the long gash. Both men looked and knew, and threw their arms around the old soldier, weeping, kissing his head and shoulders. He as well took each man's head and hands to kiss, then said to cut it short, or else they might weep till dark. Break off! No more of this. Anyone at the door could see and tell them. Drift back in, but separately, at intervals, after me. Okay, so if anyone sees us hugging and kissing and all this, they're going to know. Okay, so let's cut it out. They go in separately. But first, he has to give them some orders. Now listen to your orders. When the time comes, those gentlemen to a man will be dead against giving me bow or quiver. Defy them. Eumaeus, bring the bow and put it in my hands there at the door. Tell the women to lock their own door tight. Tell them if someone hears the shock of arms or groans of men in hall or court, not one must show her face, but keep still at her weaving. Philaetes, run to the outer gate and lock it. Throw the crossbar and lash it. He turned back into the courtyard and the beautiful house and took the stool he had before. They followed one by one, the two hands loyal to him. Eurymachus had now picked up the bow. He turned it round and turned it round before the licking flame to warm it up, but could not even so put stress upon it to jam the loop over the tip, though his heart groaned to bursting. Then he said grimly, "Curse this day. What gloom I feel, not for myself alone, and not only because we lose that bride. Women are not lacking in Achaia, in other towns, or on Ithaca. No, the worst is humiliation, to be shown up for children measured against Odysseus. We who cannot even hitch the string over his bow. What shame to be repeated of us, after us." Antinius said, "Come to yourself. You know this is not the way this business ends. Today the islanders held a holiday, a holy day. No day to sweat over a bowstring. Keep your head." So all of a sudden Antinius is like, oh, it's a holiday. We shouldn't be doing this anyway. Yeah, right. Where'd he come up with that? "Postpone the bow. I say we leave the axes planted where they are. No one will take them. No one comes to Odysseus' hall tonight. Break out good wine and brim our cups again. We'll keep the crooked bow safe tonight. Order the fattest goats Melanthius has brought down tomorrow noon, and offer thigh bones burning to Apollo, god of archers, while we try out the bow and make the shot." Okay, so we won't meet again till tomorrow. We'll make some sacrifices to Apollo. Yeah, then we'll be able to do it. Very timely. Antinius has not yet had his turn at the bow, so he gets this idea before it's his turn. He's using every advantage that he can. As this appealed to everyone, heralds came, pouring fresh water for their hands, and boys filled up the wine bowls. Joints of meat went round, fresh cuts for all, while each man made his offering, tilting the red wine to the gods, and drank his fill. Then spoke Odysseus, all craft and gall. "My lords, contenders for the queen, permit me, a passion in me moves me, to speak out. I put it to Eurymachus above all, and to that brilliant prince, Antinius, just now how wise his counsel was, to leave the trial and turn your thoughts to the immortal gods. Apollo will give power tomorrow to whom he wills. But let me try my hand at the smooth bow. Let me test my fingers and pull to see if any of the old-time kick is there, or if thin fare and roving took it out of me. Now, irritation, beyond reason, swept them all, since they were nagged by fear that he could string it. Antinius answered coldly and at length, "You bleary vagabond, no rag of sense is left you. Are you not coddled here enough at table, taking meat with gentlemen, your betters, denied nothing and listening to our talk? When have we let a tramp hear all our talk? The sweet goad of wine has made you rave. Here's the evil wine can do to those who swig it down. Even the centaur, Eurytion, in Peirithous' hall, among the Lapithae, came to a bloody end because of wine. Wine ruined him. It crazed him, drove him wild for rape in that great house. The princes cornered him in fury, leaping on him to drag him out and crop his ears and nose. Drink had destroyed his mind, and so he ended in that mutilation, fool that he was. Centaurs and men made war for this, but the drunkard first brought hurt upon himself." So, if we were still writing our essay paragraph about drugs, there's another item Homer is stating about the wine and what happens when people drink too much wine. But here's the whole point of Antinius' story. The tale applies to you. I promise you great trouble if you touch that bow. So here's Antinius in Odysseus' house, eating and drinking, but he acts as if it's his house, telling Odysseus what he should and shouldn't do, telling Telemachus who he should and shouldn't bring in. "You'll come by, no indulgence in our house, kick down into a ship's bilge, out to sea you go, and nothing saves you. Drink, but hold your tongue. Make no contention here with younger men." At this, the watchful Penelope interposed. "Antinius, discourtesy to a guest of Telemachus, whatever guest that is not handsome. What are you afraid of? Suppose this exile put his back into it and drew the great bow of Odysseus. Could he then take me home to be his bride? You know he does not imagine that. No one need let that prospect weigh upon his dinner. How very, very improbable it seems." It was Eurymachus who answered her. "Penelope, O daughter of Icarus, most subtle queen, we are not given to fantasy, no, but our ears burn at what men might say, and women too. We hear some jackal whispering, how far inferior to the great husband her suitors are, can't even budge his bow, think of it, and a beggar, out of nowhere, strung it quick and made the needle shot. That kind of disrepute we would not care for." Penelope replied, steadfast and wary, "Eurymachus, you have no good repute in this realm, nor the faintest hope of it. Men who abused a prince's house for years, consumed his wine and cattle? Shame enough! Why hang your heads over a trifle now? The stranger is a big man, well compacted, and claims to be of noble blood. Aye, give him the bow and let us have it out. What I can promise him I will. If by the kindness of Apollo he prevails, he shall be clothed well and equipped. A fine shirt and cloak I promise him, a lance for keeping dogs at bay or men, a broadsword, sandals to protect his feet, escort, and freedom to go where he will." Telemachus now faced her and said sharply, "Mother, as to the bow and who may handle it or not handle it, no man here has more authority than I do, not one lord of our own stony Ithaca, nor the islands lying east toward Elis. No one stops me if I choose to give these weapons outright to my guest. Return to your own hall, tend your spindle, tend your loom, direct your maids at work. This question of the bow will be for men to settle, most of all for me. I am master here." So basically he said, "Go away, Mom. This is men's stuff." She gazed in wonder, turned, and so withdrew, her son's clear-headed bravery in her heart. But when she had mounted to her rooms again with all her women, then she fell to weeping for Odysseus her husband. Gray-eyed Athena presently cast a sweet sleep on her eyes. The swineherd had horned bow in his hands, moving toward Odysseus, when the crowd in the banquet hall broke into an ugly din, shouts rising from the flushed young man. "Ho! Where do you think you're taking that, you smutty slave? What is this dithering? We'll toss you back alone among the pigs for your own dogs to eat if bright Apollo nods and the gods are kind." He faltered, all at once put down the bow and stood in panic, buffeted by waves of cries. Hearing Telemachus from another quarter shout, "Go on! Take him the bow! Do you obey this pack? You will be stoned back to your hills. Young as I am, my power is over you. I wish to God I had as much the upper hand of these. There would be suitors pitched like dead rats through our gate for the evil plotted here." Telemachus's frenzy struck someone as funny, and soon the whole room roared with laughter at him, so that all tension passed. Eumaeus picked up the bow and quiver, making for the door, and there he placed them in Odysseus's hands. Calling Euryclea to his side, he said, "Telemachus trusts you to take care of the women's doorway. Lock it tight. If anyone inside should hear the shock of arms or groans of men in hall or court, not one must show her face, but go on with her weaving." The old woman nodded and kept still. She disappeared into the women's hall, bolting the door behind her. Philetus left the house now at one bound, cat-like, running to bolt the courtyard gate. A coil of deck rope of papyrus fiber lay in the gateway. This he used for lashing, and ran back to the same stool as before. "You mean it's bedtime?" "Oh, okay." Ran back to the same stool as before, fastening his eyes upon Odysseus. And Odysseus took his time, turning the bow, tapping it, every inch for borings that termites might have made, while the master of the weapon was abroad. The suitors were now watching him, and some jested among themselves. "A bow lover, dealer in old bows. Maybe he has one like it at home, or an itch to make one for himself. See how he handles it, the sly old buzzard." And one disdainful suitor added this, "May his fortune grow an inch for every inch he bends it." Sarcastic blessing. But the man skilled in all ways of contending, satisfied by the great bow's look and heft, like a musician, like a harper, when with quiet hand upon his instrument he draws between his thumb and forefinger a sweet new string upon a peg, so effortlessly Odysseus in one motion strung the bow, then slid his right hand down the cord and plucked it, so the taut gut vibrating hummed and sang a swallow's note. In the hushed hall, it smote the suitors, and all their faces changed. Then Zeus thundered overhead one loud crack for a sign, and Odysseus laughed within him that the son of crooked-minded Cronus had flung that omen down. So there's a symbol from Zeus here. He picked one ready arrow from his table where it lay bare. The rest were waiting still in the quiver for the young men's turn to come. He knocked it, let it rest along the hand grip, and drew the string and grooved butt of the arrow, aiming from where he sat upon the stool. Now flashed arrow from twanging bow, clean as a whistle, through every socket ring, and grazed not one to thud with heavy brazen head beyond. Then quietly Odysseus said, "Telemachus, the stranger you welcomed in your hall has not disgraced you. I did not miss, neither did I take all day stringing the bow. My hand and eye are sound, not so contemptible as the young men say. The hour has come to cook their lordships' mutton, supper by daylight, other amusements later, with song and harping that adorn a feast." He dropped his eyes and nodded, And the Prince Telemachus, true son of King Odysseus, belted his sword on, clapped hand to his spear, and with a clink and glitter of keen bronze, stood by his chair in the forefront near his father. So, important here, Odysseus is saying it's time to cook their goose. Their goose is cooked. And Telemachus is called true son of King Odysseus, and they stand together prepared to fight. Book 22's next.